The reason why you're struggling in business and life is because you're thinking too short term. We're going to talk about attributing the results of your actions to things that you did in the past. The idea is the results you're seeing today came from actions you took like 6 months ago, 12 months ago, could even be years ago. In business, it can be really hard to figure out why are things going well right now, or usually it's why are things going so wrong right now. I used to really struggle with this because I was a short-term thinker. We're trained all through school and through life to think really short-term. We have these devices that give us instant gratification. Anything we want, we just get it instantly. But in business and life, a lot of times you need to think really long-term. And so, for example, like a few years ago, I'm running my business. We don't have any clients. You know, we had just got done with a busy stretch, and then all of a sudden things were dying down, and I'm sitting around wondering, what am I doing wrong right now? I went online. I often go to Reddit when I'm trying to find answers to these kinds of questions, because Reddit's a place where people are constantly sharing their own stories and whatnot. And I came across this thread where this guy is talking about how when you're trying to attribute what's going on today to your actions, most of the time your actions happen a long time ago. And it's the things you did 6 months ago that are yielding the results today. But the problem is most of the time we don't remember what we were doing 6 months ago. We only know what we were doing today, maybe yesterday, maybe a week ago. And this manifests itself in my day-to-day now when I'm working with clients, because oftentimes we're working on organic online marketing, which has a really big delayed effect. You might take a bunch of actions this month, but you won't see the results of those actions for 3 months, sometimes 6 months, maybe even more. So what happens is people will get this idea that, oh, okay, I need a website and I need a Google listing and I'll get some reviews and like all my problems will be solved. I'm gonna get tons of customers. And they do this and they'll get a new website and they'll get some reviews, and around 2 months later, they'll be sitting around being like, okay, that didn't work at all. I only got one customer. This is not what I expected. And so they scrap the entire idea and they go a whole new direction. And they pursue that for a couple months. And maybe that doesn't work immediately. And so they're constantly changing directions and doing something different. And I'm the same. I'm guilty of doing this all the time, and I'm getting better at it. The lesson I've learned is to stick with things for a longer amount of time and take things slower, because I know all the work that we're putting in right now on our marketing, on our processes, even when I go to the gym, I know that I'm not going to see the results from this for an extended period of time. So if I really believe this is going to work, I have to be willing to commit to it for an extended amount of time, and maybe I'll set that time now, like, okay, I'm gonna do this for 6 months and then reassess. But it's hard to remember what you're doing 6 months ago, especially if you're constantly changing directions. Changing directions less can be a good idea. Maybe spending less time or spending more time when you're trying to figure out what to do. Spend more time exploring your options, looking at the results other people have got, making your plan, and then committing to it for an extended amount of time. Roman, ask me some questions. Help me flesh this out. Have you ever noticed this kind of stuff in your own life or your own business?
And so what are some tips you have for shifting to a longer term way of thinking, especially for people who are like, you need money today or this month or this year? How do you shift to that longer term thinking?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that show Undercover Millionaire. The whole premise is he starts off in a new town with like $2,000, and he has to create $1 million business in 3 months. The first episode, his only objective was to get shelter. He started off thinking about the necessities and trying to get those covered. And so he buys a truck, decides to sleep in the truck. He gets food, and he works some small deals like buying and selling tires to cover his living expenses for the next 3 months. And as soon as he gets those things secured, then he forgets about that and he goes full on to long-term thinking of like, how am I going to build what I'm trying to build? I think that's the answer, is like you have to identify what are the things that you have to think about short term and how can you get those taken care of, because it's not until you're out of survival mode that you can start thinking long term. And if you're in survival mode, well then just be in survival mode and get that shit taken care of and then think long term. If you're gonna go out of business in 2 months if you don't figure something out, there's no point thinking 10 years down the line. You need to put out the fire first.
So what advice do you have for the contractor who's been stuck in survival mode for 10 years, 15 years? How do you break that cycle?
How did I break that cycle? Because I was in survival mode for a long time. I don't have a super clear answer for myself because it was just something that happened over time. I thought short term, I put out fires, and I kept looking at what I was doing and trying new things. If you've been in survival mode for 20 years, doing the same things you've always done, your situation won't change. So it's like kind of taking a pause and like look at the situation you're in now and like what can you attribute that situation to? Is it your money spending habits? Are you making enough money but spend it so fast that you can't ever get out of survival mode? In my case, I was just never making enough money. Like if I saved half of what I used to make for 10 years, I still would have been broke because I just wasn't making enough. And so that was the issue. And I identified that. And then my only goal became, how can I earn more? We all have the same amount of time. So how do I earn more? For me, it meant finding a way to disconnect my time from my income and start leveraging other people's time and technology. And it happened gradually, but there came a point where I just realized one day, like I'm not in survival mode anymore. And so that's when I started to think longer term of like, okay, I'm not in survival mode. I've got things taken care of. If something happens, I'm good. So now what do I think about? My view of the future just started growing. So my advice is to write down some reasons why you might be stuck in survival mode and identify what those things are and then resolve to solve them, maybe one at a time. The two that I mentioned are some of the biggest ones. Is like money spending habits or income. If one of those is really screwed up, you're gonna be stuck there for a long time.
As for the contractor who's like working all the hours, no extra time, thinks he can't take on more jobs, if you're capped out in that way, that's when you raise your prices.
People are afraid to raise their prices sometimes because they're afraid that people won't pay it and they won't have any customers. If you write this stuff down and do the math, you might be better off staying at home not working than going out and doing jobs that don't pay you enough. And that's what I discovered a long time ago. I'm not even going to leave my house for less than this much. And this same stuff applies to like diet and fitness. Like diet and fitness are like the quintessential problems. Like they never go away. It's why it's such a big industry. But like people will go to the gym for 2 months and they'll eat a clean diet for 2 months. And then they look in the mirror and they're like, well, this isn't working. So then they just give up. Studies are showing that when you go work out in the gym really hard, it could take your body like 6 weeks to adapt to that one workout that you did. And 6 weeks from now, I guarantee I'm not gonna remember the workout I did unless I'm tracking it and writing it down every day, which I do. I use an app. I think it's called Strong. But anyways, the point is like in business, I've developed systems to just track everything I'm doing. I have a calendar, I have a notebook. I put everything I'm doing in these places so that in a year from now, when I'm running all my numbers and I'm looking at what's going on, I can look back in time and be like, okay, here's all the stuff I was doing back then, and just try to get a better idea of what to attribute these results to. My grandma always told me, you are what you've been doing for the last 6 months. I think that's true. What you do today isn't gonna have a major effect on tomorrow, but things that you do today could have a huge impact on things that happen in a year from now. So, there's no like super amazing remedy for this, but it's just something to know about the nature of life and business is things are really delayed. That's what delayed gratification is. And that's why if you focus on the fundamentals and just do like the little things right, like make sure your pricing's right and make sure you're not spending all of your money all of the time and make sure you're eating mostly good stuff and make sure you get some exercise, you're gonna be good in the long run.
This is so related to marketing because look at your YouTube a video a week for, the first year. Is that what you're at now? Like, this is basically year 3 for you now?
Yeah, I think so. End of 2020. It's been over 3 years now.
Because after 1 year, not much was happening, but after 3 years, you're flooded with opportunities.
Yeah.
And the gap is so big between you and the Chuck who never started posting a video a week.
Yeah, that's true. I got lucky. Like, I started recording videos because I had a camera sitting around and I'd just get ideas, and so I'd post videos about it. If I had been doing that to get more customers or subscribers, I probably would have given up after 6 months, because 6 months of weekly posting, nobody was watching anything. I mean, there was a few people, but like, it wasn't bringing in any business for my marketing company, but I didn't care. That's not why I was doing it. So that's a really good example. I totally would have given up back then. Now, going through this experience means next time I'm in a similar situation, I'll be willing to wait longer for results because I know that they can take a lot longer. There's that saying, people overestimate what they can do in 6 months, but underestimate what they could do in 6 years.
That could even be applied to like door knocking, like how you always talk about, like, knock the 10 or 20 doors near the job. If you do that every day, how many doors is that over 5 years? Like, it's huge.
This is relevant with lead generation for remodeling companies. I've owned a remodeling company for a long time. I've been through all of this, so I know it from experience. But like, new guys who are just starting to do marketing, and they only do high-end remodels. So you might get 10 leads a month for 6 months. That's 60 leads. And then in the 6th month, get one huge remodel that just makes it all worth it. But if you haven't gone through that before, you might give up after 3 months and be like, this isn't working. And I see it all the time. It's like half of my battle is just convincing people to give it more time. And I've seen the opposite happen too. Like, I've seen people embark on a lead generation journey, and the very first lead that comes in is this huge project. And they're just over the moon. They think, oh my God, this is so easy. It worked so good. But then for 2 months, they don't get another job. And then they start thinking, okay, this doesn't work. That was a fluke. You have to resolve to just, what are you gonna do every day, every week, every month? And just keep going. And don't look at the results every day. Look back over the last year and assess whether something's working, because a lot of things do. Some things you'll know pretty quick if it's working or not, but other things you won't. So recognizing that ahead of time, that'll help you avoid a lot of frustration. Another way I look at this is like, if you're like walking through a forest or something, and like the path is really windy, and like you're right here, and you can see, like, this is what you can see. And you can see behind you a little ways. So, you might be getting some results here, but you can't really see clearly what you were doing back here unless you were tracking it somehow. And maybe some shit you were doing way back here, if this was like a timeline, is the reason why your business is succeeding or failing. If you can't see it, you just sit there and you're kind of mystified. You're like, I don't know what's going on, but it's good or bad. And I've been there so many times. That's why I can talk about this. 95.4% of you watching this video are not subscribed. Please help my channel, hit the subscribe button, share this video with someone that could benefit.